afternoon, everyone. Well, at least for those on the East Coast, for those who are on the West Coast, good morning. And thanks for joining us today on this webinar on amplifying your channel sales through a global ecosystem. With me today is Cheryl Power. Cheryl has been an account manager in some form for over the last 25 years. She's managed global programs, global partners. She's been in technology for her entire career, either through acquisition of technology, selling technology, or developing or growing technology overall. Cheryl has joined Channel Assist as the Global Accounts Director, and Cheryl just joined us in the last month. Cheryl, welcome.
Thank you very much, Richard.
Great, great to have you. So let's just jump right in. So according to a channel marketing survey, in 2021, 91% of channel revenue, 91% of executives expect their channel revenue to grow. In that same survey, 88% are dependent on channel growth to grow their overall revenue. The most interesting of all of that is only 20% are actually satisfied with their channel. And on top of that, only 16% are going to increase their channel spend. Sounds like a lot of confusing numbers to get to the point of, it looks like to me that almost everybody's expecting their channel to grow just automatically. And why shouldn't they expect that?
Well, there's three ways that you can grow your channel, right? You can get more of the current channel partners, you can recruit net new partners, or you can do a combination of both. So just to kind of level set on recruiting as a part of channel, I mean, here's really the how the ecosystem works with channel. Vendors with very, very good intentions will go out and they'll say, okay, well, my ideal partner looks like this. And there might be 10 levels of criteria. For example, I want partners who've been in business this long. I want partners who do these kinds of services. I want partners who make this kind of revenue, have this many salespeople, etc. So when you embark on a channel program, you have a perfect ideal set of criteria that help you choose your partners. So in most vendors that I've worked with, like larger vendors, it's about having the time. So those partners who meet the majority of those criteria end up creating your 80-20 rule, which is typical in channel. In all of my experience, 80-20 has always applied. And it's not for intentions, but typically a vendor will have channel account managers who create relationships with the 20% of those partners who are going to typically create 80% of their revenue. Those partners meet most of the criteria, and the channel account manager creates deep relationships with those partners. They have mutual commitments, business alignment, and the channel partner takes care of them on a daily basis, and they create revenue together. But that leaves the 80% of the channel who have signed up to sell your product. They really like your product, but maybe they don't meet all of the criteria of your ideal partner. Perhaps they're 5 out of 10. Maybe they're 6 out of 10. But in most cases, this 80% are those partners who don't get the majority of the touch that the vendor can operationally afford to give them. So in those cases, you get a lot of partners who don't have the ability to create the net amount of revenue. Now, in the case of that 80%, the vendor has the power to be able to create programs that help that partner learn about the product, help that partner represent your product to their end customers. But there's not a lot of direct touch from the vendor. So in those cases, programs that the vendor develops becomes the only way that the partner gets any touch and any information so that they can create a solution that best fits their customers. But I mean, in these cases as well, you're going to look at a combination of growing your channel as well as getting more out of your current partners.
Well, it seems to me that everybody wants to add more partners, but can they really expect to add more partners this year to drive revenue this year? So it really kind of comes down to, how do you get the most out of your current partners? I think any partner that you sign up this year is more than likely to drive revenue for you maybe next year. But I think it's a little ambitious to hope that a partner you sign today is going to be able to start selling your product successfully this year. And combine that with the fact that if you do want to sign a new partner, that new partner, do they currently sell a competitive product? Is that why they're of value? Do they have a hole in their offering? Do they understand how to position your product? There's a lot of complexities involved in signing a partner. It's not just as simple as sign the contract. You have to roll out all these programs, get them trained, identify opportunities. So there's a lot of work. It's just like hiring a new sales rep, except on a larger scale.
It is very cumbersome, and I'd say from the degree of importance in developing and rolling out a channel, recruitment criteria is number one. You need to have the right partners who have the right type of business, then the right customers who need your product. So, I mean, once you've decided that, now you have the partners who will naturally float to the top, and then you have the partners where your solution is important, but they may only sell 5 to 10 of those a year. So how you develop the 80% of those partners who will be creating 20% of your revenue, in a way that speaks directly to them, is so key. It's so key for any channel. And if you don't know them, they will not know you. So that, in my experience in the channel, is a challenge and has been a challenge since the beginning of my time, and remains that challenge just by sheer numbers. How much time does a vendor have? How many CAMs does a vendor have? And in the case of the top 20% who make the 80% of the revenue for the vendors, the channel account manager is so much closer to that partner. They know the partner, they know the salespeople, and the guarantee is that everything changes. So how does a vendor get control or have knowledge of that partner who might have just missed the top 20 criteria by like 2 aspects, who is now changing and growing and adding, skill sets and adding markets to their portfolio? How does a vendor make sure that they're with that partner and the partner is cognizant of their solution in a way that helps them develop alignment, business alignment, so that that before the partner is growing? And then how do you take advantage of that? How do you be there when they need you? That is a huge challenge. And so with all the aspects of what it requires to build a successful challenge, recruitment is number one. The 80% is number two. How do you stay present? How do you let them know what your value is to their customers? So the programs that you deliver to those 80% almost become more important than what you deliver to the top 20%, because this is an unknown factor in a lot of cases. So it's quite a challenge.
So you've already made running a channel seem pretty darn difficult. So let's add more complexity, shall we? So I'm just going to quickly share my screen here, and so the challenge for organizations gets exponential when you start talking about global and the global impact of trying to run a channel. So running a channel in North America, that's difficult, and having 1,000 partners in North America, tough. But let's expand. Or if you're running a channel in Asia Pacific, and out of Singapore or out of Poland, when you're there, running a channel is, well, let's call it easier. But now let's throw in the fact that you could be in 50, 70 different countries, and the challenges associated with that. So the big challenge here is what happens when you go global, or you've already got a global channel. So a survey of executives that are in the high-tech space, the semiconductor manufacturers, and in the medical technology space, were surveyed to find out what their challenges were in running a global channel. And here are kind of the top answers. So visibility and reporting, well, I'd argue that visibility and reporting are the hardest anywhere, no matter what you do. Regulatory and contract compliance, that's something that, or one could call governance, often overlooked, but understanding the compliance associated, or the regulatory requirements to pay people in a different country, or to have money cross a border, to engage people, it could be very, very different from one country to the next. Once you get into larger deals, there's a high level of complexity, because you could be a global organization selling through a global channel into another global organization. So you're just adding to that complexity. And then, well, quite frankly, the localization. No one likes to feel like they're the second fiddle or the second country. They all want to feel like they're just as important to anybody else. So how do you establish a local presence without having to have that local presence in every single country? I mean, selling in Canada, where I'm located, is very different than selling in the United States. And the only reason Canadians are good at selling in the United States because we've been doing it for so long, but it is quite different. And then now selling to Latin America or the Asia Pacific, all have different sales cultures. Speed in dealing with channel partners. Let's face it, back when I started in the channel back in the mid 80s, speed was the response time of a week. But now that has totally changed. Now it's instantaneous. Eliminating the overhead associated with overpayments on incentive programs and rebates, where making sure that you're paying the channel properly, that's a big challenge. And then finally, reducing manual and error-prone processes. If your process doesn't work in the country you reside in, it most certainly not going to reside in a global environment. So, what are your thoughts on that, Cheryl? What kind of jumps out at you?
Well, to back up just a little bit and take it out a little further, in a lot of my, I guess, lifetimes, I've been with part of North American organizations based in the US. So, localization globally, I mean, most of the vendors that I know hesitate because of exactly what you've said. And as a process-driven person myself, anally process-driven, automation, reporting, stats, always been a problem. But if we even take it down to from North America to Canada, little old Canada, right attached to North America, in my experience, Canada has, I guess with humor, been called the shoemaker's kids, because even just with Canada compared to the US, for example, in Canada, the majority of all companies in Canada are under 100 employees. And so when you try to roll out a channel program that is meant for, bigger companies, it often falls a little flat in Canada. And, without that local knowledge of, the types of companies that are here, I mean, the only Fortune 500s that we're having here, probably over $1 billion of like 500 companies in Canada. And these are customers, this is all businesses in Canada. So I have found in my experience that when rolling out channel programs, rolling out channel incentives, MDFs, et cetera, that even just the simple fact that hockey is the biggest thing ever in Canada sometimes gets lost in the translation, and a very good program delivered in the US kind of falls flat in Canada. So, although numbers, automation, reporting, so key. Vendors really need to know on a daily, if they're in 100, 150 different countries, they need to know how their programs are doing on a daily basis. For most vendors that I'm familiar with, that's not possible yet. So when I talk about going global, I consider it, that you got to know, and what's the term that I typically use is meet them where they are. So in Canada, it's possible for partners to get a little bit offended when a program is delivered that's very US centric. They're talking about things that is cared about way more in the US than it is in Canada. And that's the same for every single country, and rightfully so. Their world is in the Netherlands, let's say. And you know what? They're famous for hot dogs up there, in case anybody knows. But unless you have that local data, unless you know that rep, they don't know you. So any program that you're about to deliver, you need to know all of those things that you mentioned just previously about regulations and everything that's part and parcel to being local has to be in place for a program to be successful. And it has to be measurable. So the vendor needs to know on the daily, is what we've rolled out in Australia, is that being effective or is that not being effective? And that is a big job. It's a big job to get the right program to the right people, knowing all of the local constraints and idiosyncrasies of that local market to ensure that you have success in that market. I would say it, next to recruiting, localization, if you're going global, is penultimate.
So we have a wide variety of companies on this call. There's global companies that have a very, very well-known brand, and then there's companies whose brand isn't so well known and that don't have that global presence. So the message is obviously going to be different to each of them. So let's start with the global brand. So you have a global brand, you're in multiple countries. How do you ensure that your growth occurs in a manner that's consistent with the global brand? How do you make sure that you reach every country in the manner that they need to hear from you? So, it's that old story. What I say is one thing, but how someone perceives it is entirely different. And really,
Exactly.
quite frankly, perception is the most important part. So, if you're a large company with a global brand, everybody wants to sell your product, right? But how do you make sure that messaging that you as the global brand gets pushed down through every one of those partners and every one of those sales reps? Because at the end of the day, those are the people that are talking to those end clients.
I would say, don't try and be all things to all people. Somebody knows. You partner with the people who can take this off your plate. You partner with the people whose life, like an 80 hours, a week, pretty much in this industry, is spent on being good at what we do. So I would say, don't try and reinvent the wheel. Don't try and start from scratch and figure this out yourself. You partner with the people who know exactly what the localization requirements are for each and every individual country. And even within countries, there's sometimes territories that have specific requirements. Like, this program is not going to work in here. This one will definitely work in here. And in order to get quicker, better, faster, and as technology moves so fast, don't try and reinvent the wheel. You partner with someone who is an expert at this knowledge so that you can develop the programs the first time and have the measurable results the first time, because you know exactly what the idiosyncrasies are of each of those different regions or countries.
The challenge is that everything's about digital. Everything's about digital, and someone in their basement could basically create a product that could go global. In the software as a service world, that seems to be more and more common, and which also means that people in the field are retracting. Back when I started with AT&T way back in the 80s, they had people everywhere. But nowadays, companies don't have people everywhere. So how do you, when you partner with someone, how do you be sure that they understand the culture, that they're capable of meeting your needs? That they're not in the same boat that you are, and that you don't have that localization component?
This is now this is a sales question. So this is about somebody proving to you their success in doing this. And we are not the be all and end all for what we want to do. We need to reach out to those people who have done this before, who have been successful at this before. You don't, again, I need to reiterate, you don't reinvent the wheel. So success speaks to success. So you must understand those companies who have been successful, and I don't mean partnering companies, I don't mean vendoring companies, I mean those services companies who understand that in order to go global, you need this localized information. Those are the companies that you're going to partner with, because they've done it before and they can show you how to do it. So when you feed them a program, they'll say, tweak it this way, tweak it that way, and deliver it. Time is of the essence. Like, everybody wants to do this. Everybody wants to go global. So this is not a new idea, but how to do it in such a way that you can measure it is key. So the measurability of this depends completely on automation, being able to tell the vendor when the program is working and the program is not working. And those companies who are the localized companies who have fed you the information that helps you develop this program are your type partner. So partnering is not just from vendor to partner to end customer. Partnering includes, vendor to service company to localized company. So I always reach out to the experts. There's always somebody who's done this before me.
Now, one of the challenges that any company has, especially in the kind of the channel ecosystem as it's evolving, because it is evolving and evolving quickly, is how do you attach a return on investment on a marketing program when marketing is so hard to pin down?
Yeah.
I know that, as our organization markets, we have certain criteria that we measure to identify success, but when it comes down to nailing down the ROI, that's a very difficult thing. So now you're broadening your horizons beyond the area that you're currently focused on. You're focusing globally, and your expectation is that you're going to grow your channel globally. And now there's a third party or fourth or fifth party that are involved in the ecosystem of developing your channel. How do you measure that ROI? How can you be certain that you're getting the returns that you need in the time frame that you need them?
Exactly. This is a lifelong problem in the channels that I have been involved in. Marketing they develop the best programs. The problem becomes, how do you measure that program? And unfortunately, sometimes, and I think that anybody who's in channel right now understands that there is a challenge on succinct ROI. Anybody who's developing leads understands that there's always been a channel a problem, a challenge to nail down, the results of what you're doing. And traditionally, like our company, for example, let's say we have 100 customers and they engage us to help them go to market to that, their entire channel, to increase their loyalty, increase their relationships, increase their profitability, increase their number of transactions. Well, if we're measuring on revenue, that's not always an easy thing for a vendor company to be able to tell, a company like ours who's trying to increase their revenue, oh, well, based on what you did, we've now increased our revenue to a certain point. I like the transaction measuring perspective, because to me, as a process-driven person, as an analysis-driven person in the channel, I want to see what it was today and what it was when we're done. And you know what? Because I'm just that anal, every point in between. I want to know on the daily, on the weekly, on the monthly, how am I doing compared to other regions? How many transactions do I have? Let's call them claims. So regardless if you're training someone, if you're doing a spiff, a marketing program, regardless, it's about how many people took notice, how many channel sales reps took notice that this was going on and thought, yeah, absolutely, this is helping me. I am going to participate in this. That is tangible measurement of, we didn't have this program before. We have this program now. We have achieved or overachieved the number of transactions or claims that we see now compared to last year. And we can, succinctly predict how that is going to go up based on how well we develop these programs. That to me is exciting, because this was typically the measurement of marketing. It's like, well, we had this revenue at the beginning, we had this revenue at the end, so we ran this program. So in between, we figure that the revenue has come from doing this program. But to me, I'm too process oriented to really, I want to see the proof. Show me the proof that what I've invested in is creating more loyalty in my channel, creating more profitability. It's getting positive feedback from my channel sales reps in that great number of 80% who I really don't have time to touch on a daily basis. To me, that's something you can plan with. To me, that's something that you can compare to revenue, because you know what? I've been with vendor companies the majority of my career. We're not really bent on sharing our revenue with everybody like that. So, that excites me to be able to actually succinctly measure the progress and the benefits and the profitability that we've created through this activity. And until you do this activity, it's not being done. And once you do it, you can count it.
So I agree with you. Obviously, revenue is income is really the things that drives all companies, and then revenue is obviously critical to driving income. But sales culture is different everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
In Latin America, sometimes you have to meet 2, 3, 4 times with a prospect before you even start talking about business. So while I'm sure revenue is important in Mexico, it's not necessarily the same path in Mexico that is in the United States, that it is in Europe, that it is in Asia Pacific. How can you be certain, or how do you build and design your program in a manner that drives the activity that's required to get to that overall goal? Because I would say that if there's 150 countries, then there may very well be 150 methods to get from A to B. But they all get to A to B, it's just their methodology is different. So how can you be sure that, how do you reinforce that the programs, the promotions, the channels you're dealing with all are being met in a manner that it complements how they sell as opposed to conflicts with how they sell?
Well, that brings back localization. You need to the same way that the US needs to understand why Canada is a completely different market. We need to understand why every other country on the planet is a completely different market. I haven't hit 2 myself where, you didn't have to consider how the people sold, how long were their sales cycles, what kind of knowledge does that channel sales rep need to have, who do they involve in the sale. But irregardless, the common denominator, once you understand how people sell in that market, the common denominator becomes, since they have longer sales cycles here, maybe I will deliver this program over here. I have more time to give the channel sales reps snippets of training. I know what their toleration is for this kind of a program. I know what motivates them. I know in this country, we cannot pay dollar incentives for this. I know in this country, they would much rather donate to an environmental charity than receive things for themselves. It really comes down to that basic localization, the global localization information. And you need to have that before you can do any program.
So Now, let's talk about for a moment smaller companies, or let me rephrase that, because some of the companies are very large, but they're still in one community or one region. The companies that have no brand recognition, how do they go global? How do they build a channel? How do they partner? What's the approach that you've seen that's been most effective?
Okay, so I've built a channel from scratch, based in the US, but it was a global channel. And I now we're talking almost startup. So if you're talking about a company that is bringing a product to market.
Well, let's say they're already in market.
Okay,
they're just bringing it to a new market.
So bringing it to a new market. Well, you need to understand what the appetite is in that new market. I mean, before I look at any channel, I say, what is it that I sell? Who wants to buy it? Who do they buy it from? And who competes with me? And why is my stuff different or better than the other stuff? And that's table stakes before you even go and see how people sell or buy in a new market. So when you understand, that there's an appetite, you need to have that table stakes. What is the appetite? What is the size of the market in that country? And if, for example, my product, I think I have a market of about 1 million people in the US, but I really want to move to the UK. That's a bad example because it often is the same. So let's say, something more remote, let's say the Netherlands. And you know what? There's a lot less people there. There's a lot less business. Do they really need this product for them? And if the answer is no, then you wait, because the only inevitable thing in technology is change. And 6 months from now might not look like it did 6 months ago. So, I mean, depending on how you're planning to roll this out, I mean, you might pick your top 5 countries that have the biggest market need for this product and the most capable partners to deliver that. Again, back to recruiting criteria. You don't even think about recruiting until you've decided what your market is in that country, because you could have 10 of the top partners in the country who have the best skills, who meet your recruitment criteria, but people don't want to buy this. So, you need to move a little bit further back for that.
Would you recommend, well, I've gone through this exercise in the past, and usually so you've identified that there's a market there, or a market that you can at least believe that you participate in. So now you're starting to look at your channel, and often companies will look at a big potential partner that has large enough coverage where it gives them, well, more geography to cover. But part of that conversation is they're looking for exclusivity, or they're looking to be your sole partner, knowing that you're in a position of weakness. How do you deal with getting partners on board, but also differentiating how you deal with them versus the partners that you deal with in your current market?
That's a good one. Where'd you pull that one out of, Richard? So exclusivity, partner exclusivity is a rare thing these days. It's a very rare thing. And it's very, even more rare that you're the only product that your partner sells. So you need to look at it by market. Again, if partner exclusivity is a thing in the market that you're looking to penetrate, I mean, you've got to really think about what your goals are as a vendor, and who your market is again. So just because somebody is a really big partner doesn't mean that the people that are the people who are likely to buy your product all belong to that partner. So I think you've got to stand your ground as a vendor and give equal opportunity to any partner who has access to that market. And the clincher being that the partner, if they don't have those people in the market as their target or as their customers, they're not going to be interested in selling your product anyway. So, I mean, as a vendor, it behooves you to understand that market. So you need to do the work to understand that market. And a lot of work. You know, as a channel account manager, I'm going to take a left here without signaling. In the 80-20 rule, where 20% of your partners get most of the attention because they create the majority of your revenue, it's justified. Vendors aren't in business just, you know, for kicks. They're trying to make money. They're trying to make solutions that meet the needs of the majority of customers that keeps changing every day, all year long. So a channel account manager who's dealing with a partner is typically the one who's deciding how that partner goes to market, the one who's deciding which marketing programs, incentives, et cetera. But it only applies to that top 20%. So to be able to extend the opportunity to enable the partners who don't have direct contact or don't have direct, I guess, care and feeding from that vendor is, you know, it's a hard thing for a vendor to do. It's people, it's time, it's money. Would they like to be able to, you know, really get to know all of those partners a lot better so that they can see, so all this guy needs is a little more training, or, you know, I can help this guy expand his market. I mean, it's not feasible from a revenue perspective. So how do we do it? It is the penultimate challenge in all of my roles in channel. How do you know the 80%? How do you help them, even just digitally, be able to understand your product better and understand how it meets the needs of their market better, and be able to have them grow without that CAM presence that has the time to be able to help them? So as everything changes so fast and the world just keeps moving that much faster, I mean, you need to have the local knowledge to be able to continuously help grow that market, even though that market is very different than a market that's 2 hours away. So the complexity of it, I love it. The problem has not been solved. So you need to extend your partnerships from, you know, trying to do everything yourself as a vendor. I think it's just not possible. It's just not possible. There's so many aspects of channel that are so high maintenance. And, you know, what you really want to do is create revenue. So what if, you know, you could trust someone else who has that expertise to be able to get that attention where others have not been able to, or where your direct efforts have not been able to, and be able to show you how much more attention that you have from not being able to deliver these succinct programs. I'm not sure if that answers your question, but I mean, what you said just made me think about that challenge. And it's a lot of the reason why I came to Channel Assist, because when you see something that can be better, when I see something that can be better, I want to look for ways to fix it. I want to look for ways to bring the profitability to those vendors through those partners when they don't really know them that well. Well, we can know them, you know, we can know them locally. We can help you, we can do that and take that off your plate so that the vendors can focus on other things that are more productive for them. This is what we do all day long, every day. You know, we think about these things all day long, every day. We think about localization all day long, every day. So we can prove the results. We can produce the results that they're looking for and actually free them up. It's the way the technology is changing. It's the landscape is completely different these days.
Now, if I look back at the global challenges that executives see, there were 7 of them, and 6 of them pertain to reporting and transparency and visibility. When you're rolling out a program, or when you're rolling out a channel in a different country, in a different region, it's very difficult for companies now to be able to get the data they need from their channel to be able to best manage their channel. How do you do it now when you're going beyond your comfort zone, when you're in other regions, when you weren't necessarily great at it where you are, and still have that local component to it? I mean, is it not serving two masters where I want to know everything that's going on within every partner, when they're talking to clients, when there's leads, how we're doing, but I need them to be unique and themselves so they continue to be successful. And sometimes is that not two opposing positions?
It's a great dream. It's a great dream. I mean, I don't know. Excel spreadsheets are rampant today. And if you think Excel spreadsheets are hard to track like a North American program, try extending that to global. So what I love about technology is that no matter what I'm selling, other people are developing platforms that let me, and here's my ideal, I'm just this anal. One of my first roles was managing a sales team at a partner. And the first thing I did that the salespeople didn't like was I put up screens all over the room where these inside salespeople were doing outbound. And although they were telling me they were doing 25 calls a day, which I wanted to be 100, I'm showing the screen and it's showing 7 and 6 and 5. So measurement, to actually have the ability to have a program delivered on a platform that can give you the measurement of your success on the regular without waiting until it's over to get an Excel spreadsheet and match it with another 100 Excel spreadsheets. You know what? I like charts. I don't want to collect the data. I want you to tell me how it went up and down. I want you to tell me why it went up and down. I don't want to count it, and I don't want to wait a month for this to be counted. I mean, ideally, the perfect world for a vendor is to be able to say, all right, well, this is how we launched this yesterday. It's going for 6 months, and every week we get, the details on what has happened with this program, and it shows us loyalty. It's like, oh, look, 100 more guys in the UK have joined the program and have actually, created some claims on the program. And we know that relates back to revenue. And, to be honest, I don't think they can count the revenue as fast as they can count the programs, as long as it's on the right platform, which is real today. There are platforms that mean you don't need to use an Excel spreadsheet to track your progress. That's nirvana to me, because in channel, we have so much to do. We don't have time to combine spreadsheets. We want it now. Quicker, better, faster has always been my motto. So it excites me that you can actually have day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month progress reports, because that's agile. It gives you the opportunity to switch on a dime. If 2 weeks into a 3-month program that the uptake is not what you predicted, go and find out why. Is it one country? Is it another country? You can move, you can change your messaging, and you can do it because you've got the information. I mean, it's such a overused, need. Oh, we need the data. We need it put in such a form that we can make decisions on the data. Well, even in this day and age, it's really not reality for the majority of vendors or the majority of countries. And, while a vendor is busy, trying to create revenue and create the best products for their consumers and run a channel, which to me is a whole other business. I mean, to be able to measure the success and the productivity of what you're doing for everybody, your entire channel, is key to being able to be ahead of it and predict it. And you will not be successful unless you can do that, because then you're where you were before. We want to go global. Every company wants to go global now, especially now when everything is remote. It's possible now. The possibilities are opened up so much more than saying, well, if we can do this all remotely in North America, why can't we do it remotely around the world? Your only speed bump is making sure that you're localized appropriately, that your program is localized appropriately, and that you can measure it. So, to your point about the report and the results, measurement, automation has always been and remains an issue. If you can take that problem off the table, your only issue is localization and quality programs. And, quality programs I've seen, but if a quality program is delivered in the wrong format and it's not localized, then it's not a quality program anymore. Quality is localized.
It gives me reminds me of a book I had read and talked about the three components of leadership. Three components of leadership, whether they apply to people or to organizations, is prediction, the ability to see into the future, be it 1 second or be it 1 month or 1 year, so that you can anticipate what's going to come down. Transactional, the ability to take things you do on a regular basis and turn them into activities that occur regularly and often, so that you can actually focus on the non-transactional components of your business. And then finally, delegation. And channel is the delegation part, the ability to give others a task that they do better than you do. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Brooke and to see if there's any questions from our attendees. Brooke?
Great. Thank you so much, Richard and Cheryl. Great insights. Awesome conversation. Really appreciate it. So again, we do have some questions already, but to anyone out there, if you'd like, please add your questions to the Q&A section below, and we will get to them. So the first question is specific to distribution. What role does the distribution channel play in a global program?
Shall I take that, Richard?
Well, it adds more complexity. If you're in one region, you can use distributors to actually address your smaller channel partners through training and inventory control and all of those other advantages. But when you enter into a global situation, distribution gets more complex. And the reason it gets more complex is because you've now separated yourself one step further from your customer. And that's always a challenge. Everybody wants to own the customer. And now with distributors involved, you're more separated. And so that's where consistency of message and goals and objectives have to be truly identified and communicated, because every channel partner has their own goals and objectives already. And aligning with those is tough. But now when you add a distributor who has their own goals and objectives, you've added a third party into the mix. And never mind the fact that the most important goals and objectives are those of the customer. So now there's 4 stakeholders involved in the process. So it's really important that when you use distribution beyond your area or region of focus, that you have a very, very strong brand and that your goals and objectives are in tight alignment with what that distributor's goals and objectives are. Because if they're not, they're going to control your channel and they're going to control your customer. And if you get too far separated, before you know it, you've lost your entire channel. So distribution is essential more often than not in the hardware space for inventory control and speed to market. But you need to make sure that you're on the same page and that you have local representation to make sure that messaging is essential and consistent throughout. Without that, one piece of those 4 stakeholders that disappears means that you could lose your entire marketplace.
Mm-hmm. You know what, I can add to that. Traditionally, distribution has been the place where the 80% get their knowledge. The buying journey has changed so much, even in the last 5 years. Often, previously, I would see the smaller partners would be calling up Disty to say, you know what, I'm looking at, let's say, desktops, and my customer is looking at this, but I saw that, you know, this might have had more features. And they used to look to Disty to help them make a decision. And I see that going away to an extent. I hope I'm not, you know, going opposite to what you're saying, Richard, but I see that going away to an extent as volumes increase. I mean, through like Ingram Micro, I mean, they're global, obviously, but, you know, the people who are really selling are the partners. Distribution, yes, they must have the stock in order. They must have all the processes to ensure that once a product is ordered, it gets there on time. But the influence of distribution, I think, has been reduced a lot in the last 5 years. And I think the onus really needs to be on the channel sales reps, because they are individuals and they are busy. You know, I mean, some channel sales reps have, 1,000 SKUs that they can sell, and some have 100,000 or 1 million SKUs that they can sell. And it becomes about mind share for them. And distribution is almost a last step, or it's a pricing. It's like your purchasing department almost. You say, okay, my customer is looking for XYZ. Can you give me comparative prices on this? And even to the point where smaller partners will shop distributors to see if they can get a bigger discount from them. So it becomes more a purchasing question. The sale and the loyalty creation for a vendor, I think, happens at the partner sales rep level. So, is there a role for distribution? Absolutely. Are they morphing into something else? Well, if you've seen any of the marketplaces that they've put up now to make it easier for people, the partners, to buy without talking to a rep, I mean, you see that is a huge change for them. You even see distributors putting together services teams and cloud teams so that it makes it easier for partners to get what they need immediately. But still, the onus is on the channel sales rep. It's the channel sales rep who's talking to distribution. It's the channel sales rep who's talking to the customer. And I mean, even the people who are making the buying decision. I mean, we could go on about that, but it's not just loyalty. I mean, partner loyalty, I don't really, I'm not going to say that. I'm going to say I see the transition from partner loyalty to customer loyalty on the part of So a customer will still do 80% of all their research. If they're really have a great relationship with their partner will be part of their process of doing that 80% research. And then at the end of it, and people have reached out to me for this multiple times over the last 6 months or a year. Hey, my customer is looking to buy X product, and because you know about this kind of an industry, would you mind sitting in with a conversation with my customer? And when my partner, that's the partner saying it, partner reaches out to me and said, you know what, we just want another view on whether this is the right product. So in those cases, I see the onus really going on, still, it's on the consumer. And the consumer is only loyal to that partner as long, and they've got their own 80-20. 80% of the time, that partner helps them get the right product at the right time. The partner helps them decide on what technology to get. But their loyalty doesn't last forever. It's how many times has the partner not delivered? How many times have I not been happy with the pricing and found out later it could have been better? So, I mean, the consumer is king here, and the partner, like, we have access to the channel sales reps. So that's where I think that, the onus really is on vendors, is to make sure that channel sales rep, who doesn't have any time in a day, does not have to go on a half-hour, seminar to learn all the ins and outs of their specific product, but can take like a 3-minute video and say, hey, you know what? Once you do this 3-minute video, you win X. Or you get, this much credit for something. And on that 3-minute video, it tells them why my stuff is different from somebody else's, and that's it, because they already know, right? So, I mean, the difference in the increase in sales becomes the attention of that channel sales rep. Sorry for going on so long.
No problem. So we do have another question here. I know that the question, I know you talked about automating reports and reporting results, but how important is automation of program delivery and rewards in a global program?
As you scale, the one thing that you're going to find is it becomes a numbers game in my mind. The larger you get, the more partners your account manager has to manage. And it becomes impossible for them to get to all the people they need to get to. And so one of the things that Channel Assist focuses on is we focus on the channel sales rep. The partner is obviously important, But just because a partner signed a contract or an agreement that they're going to sell your product doesn't mean that they're actually going to sell your product. It's really dependent on the sales rep. And so as companies grow and as the attention that account managers pay to those individual sales reps decreases, the amount of engagement that you're going to have is going to decrease on a per partner sales rep basis. And it's just a given. It's just something that we've seen over and over and over again. And that is that service levels go down as companies get bigger.
Mhm.
So automating a process that makes sure that those sales reps stay engaged, where there's regular communication that comes consistent with the messaging, but it has to be automated in a manner where it's two-way communication. It can't always be one way, is essential to making sure that you address not only that top 20% that you're dealing with, but the other 80%, because amongst those 80% of the partners that are not performing up to expectations, there are many, many sales reps that could perform up to expectations. And if you're not engaging them, they're selling someone else's product.
Mhm.
And it's your job to engage them to figure out how you can get them to actually sell your product and
Right.
spend time thinking about your product.
And you can't manage what you can't measure. It's always been my moniker. If you can't say why you're doing well, then you can't repeat it. Right?
For sure, for sure.
Okay, so unless there's any further questions, we're right up on the hour. So Richard, for you to conclude.
Thanks, Cheryl, for your insights. Folks, we appreciate your time. Here at Channel Assist, we think about the questions that you have on your mind all the time. How do I make sure that I get the most out of my channel? How do I make sure that I keep my channel engaged in a manner that has them thinking about me and selling my product most often? It's a tough question to answer. What we think about is, why should a channel sales rep sell your product? And it's a question you have to ask every day, is why are they selling my product? What is in it for them to sell my product to my target market? And if you're not asking that question, you're going to miss the boat, because everybody thinks about themselves first. 1A, 1B, but as long as there's competitive products that meet the customer's needs, they have options. So your job is to figure out how you get the salesperson to engage. And that's what we can help you at Channel Assist. So thank you very much for your time. Thanks for spending the hour with us, and have a great day. Thanks again, Cheryl.
Thank you so much, Richard.